Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life. Hey everybody, in this episode I've got Chris Magyar. Chris is a BJJ practitioner and I believe an instructor, if I'm correct there, as well as a firearms instructor who's heavily involved in combatives also. We actually met online with the ACE virtual training setup, so we'll probably wind up talking about that a little bit during the show. But why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Chris, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. I'm a civilian. I've never been law enforcement or military, but I've been a pretty much long-term martial artist, firearms enthusiast. As you mentioned, got involved in combatives and just love to train. So I got my start somewhat later in life, around my 30s, and got introduced into Japanese Jujitsu, then Sambo, Russian Sambo, and did some judo as well. Ended up relocating from the area in Maryland where I was training to Birmingham, Alabama, where at that time there was no grappling here. So my instructors, Sambo instructor said, well, you should start a school. Like, I'm not really confident enough to start a school. I said, well, start a club. Like, yeah, I could start a club. So I created the Birmingham Sambo Club and operated that mostly out of a custom-made basement, about a 500 square foot studio for 9 years. Ended up moving out of the area, shutting down, and when I relocated back about a year odd later, didn't really want to restart that for a variety of reasons, professional and otherwise, but started getting involved in firearms. Realized I kind of knew a couple of people that, as I might say, good men with wives and kids that came home dead with. They weren't doing anything wrong. They just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I decided that I need to start carrying and I need to get some skills. Rapidly learned that training myself was not going to get me very far. Ran into Frank Proctor, who was just starting off. I think I was literally his first student in Birmingham. I think I had a full day with him, half pistol, half carbine for $150. You're not touching that these days.
No, we'll definitely have to, Frank got me into competition.
Yes.
Yeah, I know Frank from 20th Group. Frank is just a great guy. He's salt of the earth.
I don't know my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. I don't know if you ran into him or not, Chris Mize. I believe he did some training with 20th Group once upon a time, but I don't know if you ever crossed paths.
I don't think I did. He might have been a different battalion because I don't know of anything at the SOT-D. I knew Frank because even though I was in 2nd Battalion, the SOT-D is there in Anniston. So we would go there for like the FAUC and, all of our like kind of internal group level tactical and firearms training.
Okay. Well, Frank was a fantastic influence on me, showed me, what was possible. I just had no clue as to what we could do with a gun. So he got me on the path and got me involved in competitive shooting. Started off doing a little bit of IDPA, shot that for a while. Got involved with USPSA, which I grooved with that a little bit more. Struggled a little bit with the magazine retention rules in particular, especially if you're crossing back and forth between USPSA and IDPA. As a production shooter, I tend to leave a trail of magazines behind me everywhere I go, and they frown on that in IDPA. So I eventually specialized in USPSA and was furiously chasing my way up. My goal was to be a grandmaster, but I was a little late in life at that point. A couple of my buddies eventually made it. I made it to A class and was chasing master class when some life events happened and really kind of derailed my shooting. And I'll touch on that. It's a little personal, but I'll get into that just briefly. I was Doing real well, real happy. Had a nice wife. We both had successful careers, and she out of the blue comes down with ALS. And ALS is just a brutal disease where you lose control of all the muscles in your body progressively. And this was probably detectable about 3 years out, diagnosed at maybe 15 months out, and it just progressed rapidly, and I lost her. And the challenge with that situation is that you're basically taking care of somebody 7 by 24 for every bodily function.
Yeah, you're a caregiver.
You're a 7 by 24 caregiver, and the manual of instruction for keeping this person alive is quite complex, and you're not delegating anything to anybody. And this is all happening right during COVID. So we're also basically in a non-contact. We can't get, treatment, diagnostic, everything is just tough. So short of it is I learned a lot of things about healthcare I didn't want to learn. Ran it out to the gory end. She eventually passed the disease, and about 3 weeks later, I checked myself into the local hospital with chronic chest pains. Apparently, I've been doing it with a fully clogged widowmaker artery for I don't know how long. Now, why I didn't fall over dead is anybody's guess, but apparently I developed a lot of supporting vasculature that was carrying me through. So 3 overlapping stents later, I'm in a low point in my life. Mentally, I'm about shot. Physically, I'm the worst shape I've been in my entire life. And I decided that I needed to do something about it. And training was the approach. So I looked up the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing, found my coach, Chris Mize, who's just a fantastic human being. I was aware of him. Some of my students from back in the day cross-trained with him, but I had never met him. So I got involved with him, took me under his wing, and kind of started literally physically from scratch. So I had, probably 13 years of mixed grappling skills behind me, but that was 14 years ago. I was about dead, got on the mats, killed me a blue belt. And it's like, okay, well, I didn't forget everything. And started again. And I thought for the first 7 months, I was surely going to die. I had corticochondritis, which is the rib inflammation.
Oh,
Pretty much every soft tissue joint and everything just all started falling apart on me. And I'm like, okay, well, I need this. I need this physically. I need this mentally. And at this point in my life, I really don't care. I'm either going to get hard or I'm going to die. And that's okay. And as you can tell, I didn't die. And here we are about 4 years later. And I'd say I'm in, less the usual old man issues. I'm in pretty darn good shape. I've got a stripe on my purple belt, started from scratch in the Brazilian thing, strapped on that white belt, and got involved in Matt Larson's Combatives University program. I've got a green belt in that, and I'm working on my brown belt currently. I have restarted my shooting that had gotten pretty seriously interrupted. Started a little concierge firearms training business, really just focused on private instruction for individuals and small groups. And just, I travel and attend all the training and whatnot that I can cram into my schedule, basically.
yeah. And I'm not trying to, I don't want this to come across the wrong way. So hopefully I articulate this right. But I really think that having that understanding of the grind of polishing yourself through training can really help you recover from some pretty serious things in life.
Mhm.
And it sounds like that helped you there, and obviously my condolences and everything you went through, of course.
Yeah, and I'm pretty well adjusted to this thing. I don't. It's pretty hard to offend me on anything and whatnot. I thank you for your condolences. That's I would not wish ALS on anybody, and I would not wish ALS caregiving on anybody. Those are two damn near death sentences. But the point being is that you can come back from some pretty awful stuff if you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
So I put my mind to it. I think my coach, Chris Mize, literally helped save my life. Training partners, we have a pretty good crew of older folks, not all older, but longevity is one of the keys to our training strategies. So we like to play hard, but we all know we got to kind of stay intact to keep training.
And I think that's something that's all too often neglected, especially by the younger crowd. I know that I neglected it quite a bit
Oh
when I
yeah,
was younger.
I bear the spinal and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, and I wish, like, there's only a couple things, because I really wouldn't change in the big picture. I wouldn't change anything I've done in my life. Like, everything was worth it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I got exactly what I was looking for, you know? But if I could go back and tell myself just a couple of key things to make the journey a little more efficient, one of them would be prioritizing mobility and longevity and durability in my training. That would be one of them for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think people have gotten better about it in the last 10 years or so. But the problem is I'm old, and most of my training lifetime was well before the last 10 years. So, it wasn't as popular then, all the different
Uh,
massage modalities and, the really sophisticated mobility techniques people have now. We didn't do any of that.
yeah, I mean, I maintain I have a PT. It's a concierge PT offering in the area. They're mobile. You can go to them. They come to you. And I'm on a year-long program with them. I have them
Yeah.
working on me in some way, shape, or form twice a week, whether it's deep tissue massage or needling or prescribing mobility and strength workouts. I mean, I'm all in on that.
Oh, the needling stuff. That is the truth, man. It is amazing how much that helps.
The only thing better than needling is needling with the electrostim.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
I got in there a while back and I was a real mess. And PT, I was like, he's like, I get to needle you. I was like, well, what are you doing? How much? How many needles are you going to use? He's like, all of them. The nice thing, I got a pretty good pain threshold from all this martial arts stuff. So, the deep tissue massage and the PT guys, they could, I'm like, do your worst, like I
Yeah.
don't care. 'Cause
I'm always like, just
to me is like,
do what needs to be done. Like, I don't care how it, and I think that's one of the other things, I think, too, right? Like, talking about getting through, these hard times in our life and how you can fall back on the training. I think that's part of it too. Like, just knowing that the key most of the time is just doing what you need to do, whether it's fun or not, like whether it hurts or not, whether it sucks or not. Just, I got to do this. So let's get it done. Let's do it. You don't come out the other side till you start.
yeah. And I mean, it's not even true in training, it's true in life. I mean, I did some time in a tech startup company and, I talk about embracing the suck. I think the first year of 90-hour weeks and then, probably in about 7 or 8 years, I think I probably worked about literally 15 years worth of time. And, it had some payoff, but it'll drain your soul and you find out real quick what you're made of.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, actually, he's a USPSA grandmaster and an IDPA national champion, really good guy. And he just recently switched careers in his 40s, but he was a tech startup guy for like 20 years. And it was interesting to watch how his work life would change when he would start up a new company. And then things would smooth out right in time for him to go find something else to start up.
Yeah, I really just did one serious startup company, but I guess one of my claims to fame there is I was the guy that put out dumpster fires.
Yeah.
And in a startup company, there's pretty much always a department or a subject or something like that that's going to burn the company down if you don't do it. And I was a tech savvy utility player that you could put in charge of pretty much anything, and I would bring it back to life. And as soon as it was working good, I'd get fired, and they give me a new dumpster fire to work on.
You were the fixer.
I was the Mr. Wolf of that that particular startup company. 7/24, no vacations, no holidays, work on the flu and the Thanksgiving in the middle of the night. That was me.
So I'm curious about something, because this is an art I find fascinating, and you don't talk to many people that have trained it to any extensive length in the US. Sambo. How did you wind up getting involved in Sambo?
So the jujitsu thing was kind of the accident. My youngest sister invited me to her junior college jujitsu class. And you can imagine I had 3 younger sisters, and I maybe had given them a little grief somewhere along the lines of my life. And she coaches me out the mat. I'm trotting out there, and she grabbed me. I don't even know what throw she did. It's probably Haragoshi or something like that. And she drilled me into the mat like everything she. And the instructor looks over and get to be good friends with him over time. And he looks and shakes his head. He just goes, family. And he walks away. This is not my problem. So I'm like, I have no idea what you did to me, but I'm going to learn. So I started chasing the Japanese Jujitsu thing, and we're doing a lot of throws, a lot of hip throws and whatnot. And I'm kind of struggling. My knees and whatnot are not great. So getting under, and I'm 6 foot tall and lean, and getting under guys that are short and heavy is just kind of not really a thing. So I'm struggling with all this stuff. And a guy who was shaped exactly like me, about 10 years older, but had a crazy mixed, not just a variety of martial arts they knew of. He comes up and he says, you just need to stop doing it like that. You're not a 5'6" stumpy guy that's going to be coming under and throwing and doing these moves like they're doing it. Let me show you how to do it for somebody with your build. So he starts showing me a different way of approaching these problems and throws and things that make sense for my body type. Got friendly with him. Turns out that he was teaching Sambo classes on the side and was associated with a group out of Pennsylvania that was very accomplished. There was a lot of tournaments and things up in the Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania area in that time. So I got integrated into that Sambo community, started training with them, and we do a fair amount of tournamenting. We travel and whatnot, and I do the Sambo tournaments, and I did some Japanese Jujitsu tournaments, and a little after that I got judo, did some judo tournaments. This guy was his name was Scott Anderson, and he was just a masterful instructor. He had taught himself enough Russian to be able to translate Russian Sambo manual, and would email us like the translated version with pictures like constantly. And then he would learn all this stuff and integrate it and teach us. And then the top guy in our organization had actually gone to Russia and cross-trained in some military program or whatnot. And him and a number of other guys of a similar time frame had this sort of senior guy Sambo community going on. And they were passing the knowledge on to my instructor, Scott Anderson, who then passed it on to me and many others. So when I came to Birmingham, I actually called the club the Birmingham Sambo Club, although truth be told, it was a primarily sport grappling club with amalgamation of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, Judo, and anything else we could steal from anybody, anywhere. And that's what we did. We did from a gi, no gi. We kept the striking mostly out of it, not completely absent. But at the time, I'm in the startup company, and I just can't be getting hit in the head all the time. Like every IQ point I can get to survive. I'm doing software engineering. I'm doing all this other stuff, and getting hit in the head all the time is not a good career move for a software tech guy. Now I often wasn't pretty. I usually had black eyes and bloody noses and blown elbows and gimping around on blown knees. my colleagues and customers and partners in the industry were just sort of used to be always being slightly broken. And that was okay, but I just, I didn't want to disturb the brain too much, which I wish I did more striking, but I don't really. I'm glad I didn't take any more hits than I needed to.
Yeah. I had like a precautionary MRI done through the VA because I've been in through a couple of IEDs, and I had some breaching charges and normal stuff.
Yeah,
and
not for me.
I went and I did the MRI, and also like I had a pretty heavy striking background as a young guy training. Like I started out in Shotokan karate, and back then the tournaments had no pads, and yeah, it was point fighting, but if nobody bled, nobody got a penalty, So I took some hits, and some stuff happened in the military, and I went and had this MRI done, and they come out, they're like, well, Mr. Little, the results just show that you have a mild TBI. And I was all excited and happy. I'm like, okay, mild TBI, that's not so bad. I figured it could be a lot worse. Then I looked up what moderate and severe TBI are and realized that maybe these words don't mean the same thing I think they mean.
Mm-hmm. I had to take my do-over on this thing would be, especially in the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, it was not uncommon between warm-ups, being a favorite training demonstration unit for the instructors, because I was tall and lean and top-heavy and flew well and fell well. 75 to 150 falls a night was not uncommon.
Oh yeah.
And I did that
No,
years, right? And I think, my family genetics are not predispositioned to great spine, and God knows how many years and countless falls that I've taken. I don't think, they say, well, you're microfracturing your spine and your bones that are hardening up. Well, that might be true for your arms and your legs, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't doing my spine any favors.
I don't even want to know how many break falls I've done. And, and from things like Suenage and Shihonage and, stuff where you fly through the air. Like, I don't even want to know. I don't even want to think about it. And it was like nothing for us. We would think nothing of like doing it on hardwood sometimes, not even doing it on mats. Yeah. Right. Doing it in the alley behind the dojo.
Yeah. I mean, all the seminars we'd go to, a lot of times they're in hotels and things, and they wouldn't have very much mat space, and you just have the hotel carpeting.
Yeah.
And the first thing would be like, hey, who else here is those Sambo guys? Hands up. It's like, get your asses on the carpet. Get off the mats. It's like,
yeah, I know very little about Sambo, just what I've seen, on YouTube or read about in martial arts magazines, right?
So the cool thing is people don't really get that Sambo is not one thing. Sambo is a whole bunch of different flavors.
It's like an eclectic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you got to understand, they went out and created their own martial arts system that was an amalgamation of things from many arts, and including their wrestling cultures, which they had a lot of really rich wrestling cultures, jacket wrestling of different sorts. So the different styles, there was a military version where you're dealing with things like bayonets and entrenching tools and, knives and all kinds of things like that. They had a police law enforcement version where you might be doing things like all kind of restraining techniques, 2 people on 1 for control. There's
arrest and control techniques. Yeah,
exactly. There's a sport version where you're in the Sambo Kirko with the epaulets and the shorts and the leather shoes, and it kind of looks, it's kind of like jiu-jitsu.
It's like one half gi, one half Western wrestling. Yeah,
exactly. And the epaulets on the shoulders you could grab and use. That was emulated Western military uniforms of that era, which was kind of an interesting twist on things. You had the self-defense style, which looked a little bit more like your Japanese self-defense, where you have a ukitori, one person's attacking, one person's defending, you're doing all the different stuff. And then a number of people, I've seen the video from the combat Sambo where you see them in the head and they're striking and throwing and submitting and all that. So there's at least 5 full flavors of Sambo that I'm aware of, and God knows there might be more. And at the time, I was mostly focused on the sport grappling side, although we did a little bit of the military, a little of the police, pretty fair amount of the self-defense, not a whole lot of the combat Sambo. And that at the time was what just appealed to me. Now I'm wishing I had spent a lot more time on the weapons, defense combative style of things. I think would serve me well today. But the foundation of well, it really is just the blend, being able to mix judo, Japanese Jujitsu, and Sambo. There's no part of the body that I would not be happy to torture, right? And it doesn't really, kind of my style of fighting. I probably operate more like a catch wrestler and less like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy playing the chess of sequence and control moves. Like, I love the scramble. I love submissions on anything from anywhere, and we have training techniques that we do to emphasize their skill. So it's the, if you think about all your moves, and my coach likes to talk about them as the beats. Can you operate on the half beat?
Yep.
Operate on
half and quarter beat, broken rhythm.
Can you blend? There's not even any beats, and you're just in there in the mayhem, making things happen in pure chaos. And I love that. I mean, to me, that's really where my particular style shines, is I get somebody out of their groove and doing something that they're not familiar with. You don't like jackets, let's do jackets. You like strangles, just strangle. You don't like play legs, I won't play with legs. You don't want to do stand up and hand fighting and whatever. Hey, let's do some, run them down some corner where you can smell they're not comfortable and get them into this catch style, free flow, anything from everywhere. And it gets a lot of people off their game.
You'd like a friend of mine, I think, a guy named Cliff Byerly here in Texas. You familiar with Cliff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Combative Summit. I haven't trained with him directly, but I've trained with him in his Combative Summit courses.
Yeah, I like Cliff a lot, but he's a BJJ Udanche. He's at a
But he
black belt
does a lot of catch.
but he's like heavy on the catch wrestling side.
So Eric Paulson, we're affiliated under Eric Paulson. I'm here.
Okay.
But he's got one of the most diverse backgrounds. I mean, the guy's a walking encyclopedia of submissions and painful awfulness from everywhere, including catch.
The best grapplers I've ever trained with, no matter the art, right? Whether you're talking, classical Japanese Jujitsu or BJJ or judo or, whatever, right? It was always like from the moment you touched them, you hurt. You know what I mean? Like you put hands on them and then you just start hurting.
I've been accused of times of being made of titanium and razor blades.
Yeah.
The lean guy, like my bones are extra sharp, and I keep a little pull cube around to kind of keep everything.
Oh man, I used to do this thing, and this was so wrong of me. Like I was young, and this was perhaps not my moment of most sterling or flawless character in my life. So I was a teenager, and I was fighting in, Japanese karate tournaments, right? And if a guy had a really good defense, they were really good at covering up, I would just punch them in the elbow as hard as I could. Because they knew it had to hurt me as much as it hurt them. And it was always the same. I get this look of, what's wrong with you? And it was a great way to set up the next attack, right? Just that look of like disbelief, like, why would you do that?
The psychology of when you go in these matches and do it. I actually enjoy that part, especially the beginning of the match, because as a really long, lean guy in my weight classes, I was always fighting somebody who was like at least 6 inches shorter than me and stockier. And I would love, elbows in, arms out. I kind of get this slightly weird posture going on here and start reaching out at them. And you can see it. And I got some interesting kind of, they call it my kung fu, whatever nonsense, right? You start moving the hand around, shifting the body weird, stuff I picked up from some of the Sambo guys. And it just puts people off your game when you're not postured and looking and moving like what they expect or what they want. You can just see it in their eyes. Like, I don't know what to do with this person. And opportunity comes from that.
I'm going to segue on that one for a second, because that is something I think people do not attribute enough importance to in gunfighting and pure self-defense, like pure street self-defense, but especially gunfighting. And I mean, yes, obviously you have to be able to shoot very fast and very accurately. Like that's a given, right? But fighting has a mental component no matter what kind of fighting you're doing. And just like we were talking about working on the half and quarter beats, right, and broken rhythm a minute ago, that stuff applies in a gunfight too. Being able to capture the opponent's timing, like that stuff applies, and psychological pressure applies too. Like that's like a good example of this is I hate the retreating bill drill. You're at arm's length and you back up shooting the guy.
Mm-hmm.
What are you accomplishing? You haven't gotten behind cover. You're not making yourself any harder to shoot than you were when you started. And psychologically, what does it look like you're doing to that guy? Looks like you're retreating. And people don't die instantly from high center chest shots usually, right? It's very, very rare that somebody just gives up the ghost. I mean, somebody might psychologically crumple, but that's a different issue, right? So you've got a really good chance, if somebody's a determined fighter, of him thinking you're actually retreating and being submissive because you're backing up. And even if you get a potentially lethal shot in, he might still shoot you. Like, I don't like that the way that applies psychologically as a fighting tool, as a strategy. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I have 2 thoughts come to mind on that. One is the gunfighting. So something else I did early in my career, which is I can't have mixed value that I placed on this, but I got involved in paintball in the earliest days when the first paintball markers came out. I mean, the early Nelson pump pistols, and got out through about the peak of the pump cycle before semi-automatics kind of took over the thing. and I had a little team in Maryland, and we merged with another team that operated at Andrews Air Force Base, all Air Force guys. Probably about 30 guys on here, and I've probably played 1,000 games of paintball in my life conservatively. And it's not, it's got the same problem as any other training, right? It's not real bull, or conceal and cover really don't make sense in paintball like they would in real. But
you know what it does have though?
You go out there.
It's got an opponent who's not being cooperative.
Yes.
It's got an opponent who's not being cooperative. It is sparring with projectiles.
It may be 2 guys, 3 guys that are coordinating, 5 guys, 20 guys if it's a real organized team. Like mostly it's rabble, but there are like real serious competitive teams out there, and we learn to kind of deal with that whole thing and that act of how do you press, how do you see that opportunity, when do you fall back to suck them in, like the strategy of that. I have immense respect for military that does this for real, because I know how hard it is to get a bunch of enthusiastic civilians to follow the slightest of plans or strategies. Right? But when you do, it's magic, right? You just you roll the other guys. Like, I mean, even 2 you get in the right groove, you'll roll a whole team.
Oh, and easily. It's I tell my students all the time, especially in my more, because I've got like 2 course tracks for my firearms courses. I've got the skill development class and I've got the applications class, right? And one of the things I tell my civilian students all the time in the applications class is that if they don't have access to any sort of force on force, any sort of simunitions on a regular basis, to either play airsoft or paintball. No, they're not real. They're games. Anytime you're not really killing each other, it's a game. But you can use the game to develop the attributes like you were talking about, the ability to read the opponent, to put that pressure on them, to capture the timing and know what to do with it, to work together as a team, to read the other person's teamwork and how their team is operating together. And it doesn't matter how much academic knowledge you have at that from studying it. If you don't do it, you're not going to be able to do it well under stress.
Yeah, you get to experience the magic of when you figure it out. Like the moments of, where I individually did something and rolled a group or a team, or I inspired a bunch of guys to run down a really steep ditch and up a steep hill and ran an enemy out of a spot. These things kind of stick with you. What does it take to give you the courage and the confidence to do the kind of the right thing at the right time, take that calculated risk. And then when okay, lots of times you get killed, but when you succeed a few times, you're like, there's something to this, right? You use that right level of aggression, even when you're down, and you can flip this whole situation around. And that's powerful lessons.
Well, and even the times you get killed, right? I mean, killed in air quotes. Right. For the guys listening to the audio, I'm doing the air quotes. You get the opportunity to learn that lesson without it being a lethal one. And like one of the things that I really firmly believe, because I didn't get into my first one-on-one gunfight. I'm not talking about military stuff. I'm talking about one-on-one police officer, right? Mm-hmm. Until I'd done thousands and thousands of hours of force on force. I was very fortunate. I got to do a lot of force on force because of some of the different things I did on the police department, and because of getting hooked up with a trainer that came to a place not too terribly far away from me that did a lot of military and law enforcement force on force. So the actual incident was remarkably, and this is not meant to sound the wrong way. It's not meant to be braggadocious. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, it's a very serious thing, right? But it was remarkably, comparatively easy because I had done it in a simulated fashion so many times.
I absolutely get that. I mean, I don't have the, as a tech guy in the medical imaging business, we don't get a lot of gunfights going on, or physical encounters at all. But, just having done countless paintball battles, competitions, and all these different martial arts we've talked about, competition matches. Obviously, you're not dying or whatever. It's not force on force, ECQCs, EWOs, that whole thing. I don't know. My confidence in dealing with situations. I love like an EWO or ECQC. Stick on a helmet where it's it's hot, you can't see good, you can't hear good, your breathing's impaired. Like at this point, I can just kind of chill out. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like in the back end of a match. I'm like sucking and dying in the back end of a competitive match. And what's the difference, right? The other guy's dealing with it and is probably not processing it as well as I am, if I'm lucky. And you just do what you do. Who was it? Was it Cole Miller at the last combative summit? You know, he set up something. It was very interesting teaching style, but he was showing you how to get into advantaged grappling positions, and you could then do something from that position of some advantage. And they're like, well, what do you do? He's like, well, do the thing. I'm like, what's the thing? He's like, there's 50 people in this room of crazy backgrounds. Every one of you has a thing. Do the thing you do, right?
Yeah.
To me, is you get in these situations under pressure, and you've tested yourself. And I'd like to think that if I ever have my real world moment of need, that all this training under various levels of duress and simulated stress, I assume it's going to pay off.
Oh, I would be willing. I'd be willing to bet. I'd be willing to bet one of my pension checks it would pay off. The other thing I think that is important about what you just said, I think, right, is that fighting is fighting. And this is something else I tell people, like, because a lot of people, they start carrying a gun, but they've never been punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
And you need to experience that. You don't necessarily need, depending on your age, your fitness, your needs, your life goals, your lifestyle, you may not need to do a deep dive in it, but you need to put yourself in that position in training before you're in it for real.
Mm-hmm.
And being good at one kind of fighting, once you master the technical skills for another kind of fighting, makes you better at the other kind of fighting. It's easier to learn different kinds of fighting. I'm not talking about the technical side, but the ability to apply the techniques, right, is easier the more you do it in a variety of places.
So
and circumstances.
That notion of taking the hit, I have a term I use, I stole from the professional wrestlers, of taking a bump.
Yeah.
And, you know, to them, taking a bump can mean a whole lot of different things, right? And
probably mean bleeding on the brain for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, they do some nutsy stuff, right? And but my point is, I think the ability to take a bump, you've taken enough bumps in training, and that might be that knee to the head that just, you know, I remember getting headbutted in a Japanese Jujitsu dojo where I was visiting, and the guy, I don't know what their rules are, and I never did figure out their rules, but I had some literally death level matches in there. And, you know, one of them, a guy headbutts me as hard as he can, forehead to forehead, and you could hear my skull ring like a bell, and everybody stopped and looked over, like a dozen matches. And I'm like, he's like, you okay? I'm like, okay. You know? Or that knee to the head, or I remember I had a 350-pounder try to beat me into a pile of goo on a mat one day. Literally just about succeeded. It still ended up beating him, although that damn near killed me. And it's like, you remember that, hey, he's literally flogging me on the mat like a rag doll. I'm probably 165, 170 pounds, and the instructor's just staring at it like no reaction whatsoever. All kind of crazy other stuff he did to me. And
have you seen The Avengers?
I didn't die. You know what I mean?
Have you seen the movie The Avengers? When the Hulk smashes Loki? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing in my mind right now.
I think about 5 or 6 times I got slapped full body onto the mat. And I was thinking to myself, this is kind of starting to suck. And you know, I knew it was on. I just thought it's real quick. When we started, I don't know what it is. I visited a local school known for their hard style Japanese Jujitsu. Comes into class. Anybody want to roll, fight, whatever? Stick up my hand. Nobody sticks up their hand, and the giggling starts. I'm like, now like there's a pillar in the room, and this monster steps out from behind it. I'm like, what is that thing? Right? The thing is about 6'4" and huge. Later, find out he told me he was 300. They all started laughing at that too. He said he's easy 350. So we start, and the first thing I see was an elbow sail past my ear. And my reaction is, if this dude hits me with that level of follow through, I'm going immediately to the hospital, right? There's not enough of me to suck up a hit of that power, right? So I got hold of his jacket, and he gets hold of me and just starts slapping me on the ground. like it's a rag doll. Just I think there's a Beavis and Butthead where they're just slapping the guy on the concrete. Like, man, this is starting to suck. So I popped up and I managed to put a foot on his knee and get some torque and flopped him over. So he jumped up, he grabs me by the throat like a rape choke and starts trying to drive a knee up through my spine. And this dude's legs are like big. So I'm shucking and jiving. I'm taking him on the inside of my thighs. And I'm like, man, this dude hits one square hit on my spine. And I'm never the same. Somehow I get out of that and we're rolling around. I don't even remember the rest of it at this point. It was a time warp. What I do remember is at some point I got him in a basic case of gatami.
Okay.
And I've got a pretty good case of gatami. I've been training it a long time and I sucked every bit of torque and weight and focusing my energy and put it on him. And I wasn't letting him go for nothing. Right. And all of a sudden he taps. And I look up and his face, he's purple, right? And like I just gassed him, all that energy expenditure and a basic hold down finished him off.
I remember a judo shihan putting me in case of gatami, and like I was about 245 at the time, maybe heavier and lean, you know, and he was probably $135 and well over a foot shorter than me, right? And he puts me in case of gatami, and I swear to God, somebody parked one of those old school Cadillacs on my chest. You know, like the ones I'm talking about from the 60s, right? With the wheel shape for the spare wheel in the trunk, and like like he's yelling at me to do something. I'm like, I'm trying. Well, what do you want me to do?
I'm too busy dying. I love case of gatami. I mean, it's not very popular anymore, but for me, it's like if you study the submissions from there, you study the escapes. So not only can you use them to escape, but you know everything they're going to do to escape. So I've got a real good sense of feel about both how to escape, how to set somebody up one way and go the other, or feeling what they're doing underneath of me. So once I get it on, I have a high degree of confidence that I'm going to, either through just sheer pressure or time lock, pillow V lock, I think.
I will admit that I never really appreciated the value until he did that. And then I think what I liked about it was how just trying to figure out how in the world he turned the gravity up to 12 taught me a lot of lessons about, relaxing your weight onto the other person when you're grappling. You know what I mean? Using your gravity for you. And I don't know if I would have learned those lessons to that same degree if he hadn't literally squeezed every ounce of oxygen out of my lungs and then kept me there, yelling at me to do something.
It'll make you panic. It'll make you panic. If you want to do some panic, that's a great way to do it.
But back to our earlier point, right? Like if you've never been in a situation like that, if you've never been punched hard enough to see stars, if you've never had the oxygen squeezed out of your body or the breath knocked out of you, right? Or slammed on the ground. If that happens to you for the first time when it's someone intent on doing you harm, you're going to have a moment of shock where they're going to have that beat. We talked about timing, right? They're going to have that beat they can take advantage of while you're trying to figure out what in the world that was that just happened to you. I think everybody who cares about any of this stuff for defense needs to understand that, like, you've got to experience, I'm not saying you should wind up with traumatic brain injury. I'm not saying you should break all your joints, right?
Right.
But you got to feel that feeling. You got to feel what that feels like so that when it happens to you, it's not that big a deal. Because it seems like a big deal the first time.
Oh, yeah, it seems like it. But, if I look back and there's a whole host of times that I got hit way harder than I should have for these situations that we've been. And I looked back and every single one of them, the reaction was kind of the same. Like, that probably could have injured me. And it was really impressive how hard I got hit. At least to me, it was impressive. And I'm not done.
Yeah.
Like, a little switch goes off in me as like a joke a friend of mine told me as a martial arts instructor of his that had him hit him over and over again. And finally, he's a big dude. Finally hit him as hard as he could. The guy looks up and laughs. So that's the way it's going to be. and to me, whack me like that, and I'm not physically disabled. That little chuckle comes into my mind. It's like, okay,
All right, so I gotta tell
What?
I gotta tell a little bit of a police war story, right? So there was a guy we were locking up one time, and I'm not gonna get into the whole story because it would take too long, but it's a really good story. Sometime offline over whiskey and a cigar in Alabama, I'll tell you the whole story. But I put this guy in an Udagorama and popped his joints. Like they were done. And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, it's going to be like that?" And smiled at me. I was like, this guy's not human. Like, but there are people like that. Like there are people that they literally just, "Oh, that's what you got?" Arm flopping around like a rag doll. And that's the kind of the flip side too, right? Like you need to cultivate a little bit of that in yourself. But you also need to understand that not everybody reacts to what you do the same way. You know, and there are people out there that have that drive. You know, we talked about, I think we talked earlier about, you know, how a shot to the high center chest, like it may not be immediately lethal, and somebody can give up. They can just give up and, you know, quit fighting because they don't have the will to fight. And other people are going to keep going until they've pumped every ounce of blood out of their body.
So was the conversation? I can't remember who mentioned it, but they're talking about the dead man's 10 online the other day. It's like, yeah, he's going to die, but in the 10 seconds before he does, he's still capable of functioning. And if he's got a firearm or knife or whatever, there's a lot of functioning that can happen before he stops. That high center chest hit's great. And how many more are you going to keep sinking in there so he doesn't get a chance to get his 10?
Yeah. Well, and like think about this too, and I think a lot of people don't think about this when it comes to modern day gunfighting. You know, if they've only got the academic side of things, right? You've trained in classical Japanese arts. You know the concept of aiuchi, right? The reason that concept exists is because that happened all the time in feudal Japan. Like guys will get in this fight to death with a meter-long razor, and they both kill each other because it's the same thing. You know, dead isn't necessarily dead right now. And I think people don't realize the gravity of that or give that enough credence in their kind of their plans for dealing with violence and how they're going to do it.
I think, you know, I'll credit Tom Gibbons. I'd recently finished his basic advanced level training classes for protective pistol craft, and I'm off this weekend to do his master level pistol instructor class. And one of the things he made a real point on is really narrowing down the anatomic area where you're targeting.
Yeah.
A 5-inch circle here, a 5-inch triangle here. And I've been using the shoot steel targets. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I am.
But to me, it's like I have tons of sport targets for all the different sports. But to me, retraining myself to stop sinking things in the center of the USPSA A zone and really getting much more focused in on, you know, how do I put as many hits as possible in the right areas, and more failure to stop drills and all different ranges and speeds. And, you know, really for my shooting, I've tightened everything up. So the speed has to be there, and I'm not as fast as a GM, but I'm plausibly fast.
I think from the scores we've traded back and forth in Ace, I think you're pretty fast. I think you're probably a really fast shooter, to be honest.
Well, chasing you on the leaderboards is always one of my. You always give extra level of motivation when I see your name on there. It's like, can I get up next to him or maybe pass him occasionally?
Well, that's mutual. That is mutual. And there are days like I'll see you and you'll be like 5 ahead of me. I'm like, oh God damn it! How did that happen? I got to do some more work.
And there's some other guys on there too.
Yeah.
I'll call out Ryan Fowler, somebody that I love. The Fowler defense. He's, you know, he's just. I'll admit it. He's just faster than I am. Right? He's younger. Yeah. Faster and whatnot, but anytime I can put the whoop on him, man, I'm feeling good. You know? And then I'm going to come back in a day or whatever, like he'll be on top of me, and I'm just like, oh God, I had to work for that. You know?
Yeah, and that's like we're digressing, but back to what you were talking about the accuracy, right? Like I do a lot of stuff on little 3-inch circles. They're just round labels you can get on Amazon.com, yep. Right? And I like it because it is actually smaller than the high center chest optimal area, right? Yeah. So it's not so much smaller that it gets kind of stupid. You got to really dial back on the speed. Mm-hmm. but it's smaller enough to really punish you if you don't really pay attention to the sights and the trigger, you know?
Yes. Talk to the ace guys next time. I love the pasters on that on their targets on a couple of their drills, and I love blowing out the pasters, but they're a little too small for speed.
Yeah.
So something a little bigger, and then your regular zones are too much. So I'd love to see them have some more anatomically correct scored targets, and the ability to use the pop-up scoring system so you can see all your times and your hits for and then reset it. I think would really make that tool a lot more powerful as a general purpose training tool.
Maybe the capability to add filters to the targets. So like they've got their,
think about today. I mean, shooting partials, no shoots, whatever. I'll do that in the regular stages in there too, where I'm a righty tighty, lefty loosey, greatest. This could be the greatest net ever. They have these mix of open targets and no shoots, and I find it very interesting to see just how fast can you blaze through these things
and not hit the no shoot. Yeah,
and not hit that no shoot and do it. And, I don't know if you're familiar. You familiar with the classifier diamond cutter?
I am.
That was one of my favorite. I loved shooting classifiers back when I was actively chasing the USPSA. But diamond cutter was one of my favorite, and that's if I remember the distances right. 4 no shoot partials at 10 yards, turn and draw, 2 shots on each. And the GM score in production at the time was you had to run it clean in 4 seconds, and that's a lot of precise shooting to happen in 4 seconds.
That was one of the classifiers that I made master off of with PCC years ago, kind of for the same, and it was PCC, yeah, but the hit time or the time you needed for your hit factor with PCC was pretty stout.
Oh yeah, but it teaches you that. I mean, I love that controlled abandon. You got to let go, but you can't let go too much. You still be precise, and I think there's something to that. Now, I've done a post on the VR forum the other day about, and I think you remarked on it, about
the splits, the distance in your splits. Yeah, I was just about to bring that up because I really liked that post.
Because the split distances when I'm running, specifically one stage is the greatest night of our lives, and I'm running it because I could get good scores, and I was chasing my ace ranking, and it's kind of a complex stage, but if you practiced it, you could get some pretty good numbers out of it.
Yeah.
But you got to consistently be able to shoot open targets and no shoots and do a couple teleports and repeat the process. And I started, because I was running it dozens and dozens of times over many nights, I started paying attention to all little nuances and bits and pieces of details of when I was really performing well and when I would stop. And I noticed the ability to get on target, put that dot where you need it to begin with, whether it's an open or a partial, get that first shot, have that visual patience to not just leave that dot there, but not move that gun while you pull that second shot off. Have the discipline of keeping it there till it goes, and then eyes off to the next shot. My best runs on there, I was shooting near butterflies, like really close doubles on these things, and I'm like, okay, there's something to this. I need to focus on this as an objective. It's not an objective in itself. I mean, you don't get any more points for a close.
No, but it's a good metric, I think, that you can use as a tool to measure other attributes, right?
Yes.
Like split times. I don't think split times in and of themselves are important, except in very outlier circumstances, right? Like in USPSA, like can you count? Is one where your split times actually matter. In the real world, unless it's a really close gunfight where you're bill drilling the guy, your split times aren't going to matter. And I would actually argue that your split times in the real world should be a little conservative, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yep, fair enough.
But I want fast splits for a different reason. One of the demons I have always fought, both mentally and physically, is aggression and tension. I'm a very aggressive person by nature. Like, that's just my personality type, right? I try to bend the universe to my will. I try to make reality bend the knee, right? And that's not how it works. You can't bend the universe to your will, What did Masashi say? The truth is what it is, and you must bend to it or live a lie, Okay. So I've been really working hard for a long time, but really the last year, on relaxing behind the gun and having no more tension, even in my grip, than the minimum of what I need to accomplish what I'm accomplishing, right? So for me, split times are a symptom of how relaxed I am. I'm using that as a metric to see if I can get physically and mentally relaxed behind the gun, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always struggled with split times.
Oh yeah, me too.
You know, so I mean, I look at a lot of my buddies shooting, 20s and 30s, and they're in the jailbait splits, and shoot, get 11s and 13s and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm over here at 19s to 23s, and happy anytime I'm getting less than a 0.2. And I'm like, I can't all rationalize this as old guy problems, right?
No, there's
more
definitely there's a happy finger genetic component. Like
Well,
my wife has the
people
happy finger. Yeah.
I heard you talk about the podcast the other day. I thought that was
Yeah, like she can pull out 11s. I mean, she wouldn't do it in a match, but in practice, she can pull out 11s pretty much on demand.
amazing.
Just yeah. Like it's not totally controllable for her for a match, you know what I mean? But she can do it. And after probably a year of really trying to get faster splits and get more relaxed, now I'll probably pull 113 every practice session and like an 11 every couple months, and that's like after a year of trying to get relaxed and faster. And when I'm actually shooting a stage, it's still back to like 17s and 18s.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But that's okay. It's not, I'm not worried about that. Like, that's not why I'm trying to get faster with them.
I had a chance to retest in live fire. I've had a lot of remodels and moving around and things going on in my life right now, and my major range closed and got separated from my little private range that I built. But short of it is, I haven't been able to live fire much in about the last 4 months. But I've got 250,000 rounds of H professional shooting in to control myself. And my splits, I mean, I throw stupid splits in that all day long. So I'm very interested in seeing how my virtual reality splits translate over to my live fire splits.
I'd be willing to bet they probably do pretty good. I have been live firing less because of ACE than I ever did since I started competing, and getting better.
I can tell my dry fires faster, and I dry fired, when I was very active before my life kind of went off the rails here for a while. I'd gotten good enough with the dry fire that I could take a bunch of different drills, time myself, work up my par times, figure it all out, go to the range and be within a few tenths of a second in my live fire where I was in my dry fire. So I was pretty confident that, my dry fire, I was not lying to myself in terms of fight picture and triggers. And that took a lot of reps and testing at the range to kind of get to that point. But I feel like if I go and I dry fire now after shooting ACE, and I think you still need to dry fire. I mean, you need to use your real gun. You need to use your real reloads. You need to, the draws in ACE are painful at best. The reloads are kind of humorous.
Although I have figured out some ways, I think, to work them where they do benefit you in ACE, but you still got to do them in dry fire. You can't not do them in dry fire.
But kind of my point is, like, I'm seeing in my dry fire, I'm pretty sure I'm seeing some concrete benefits in my dry fire.
Yeah.
Pretty good confidence, although I'm about 4 months out of practice on testing it, that if I can do it in dry fire, I can come pretty close in live fire. So we'll see when I start putting some of my old favorite drills to the test and see what's really going on.
I'd be curious to see what you find, because I did a little experiment with myself. The transition hell drill, the Max Michel, Mike Seeklander drill. So I did that in ACE and then went to the range the same day and did it on the range. And the performance was remarkably identical.
Nice.
I mean, it was just about exactly the same.
Yeah, I'd really like to set up some things like pucker factor is one of the ones I'd really like to do. I can throw down some nice numbers on that. And I think that'd be a good test for, transitions and whatnot, just basic build drills and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an outstanding build drill guy, it's like, if I got a 2.5 second build drill, I was pretty pleased. And I know I need to be shooting 2 1/4 or 2 O's. And I know people are shooting less, but for me, that was kind of where I was. But, get on the ACE and I'm shooting numbers that are like way faster than that. Now it's artificial, but
it is
emotions,
but,
right?
But I honestly believe that, assuming you're being honest with yourself in ACE 2, because you can also fool yourself in there. Not as easily as in dry fire because it's got the feedback, but there are still ways to fool yourself in there. But I think if you're being mindful I know that's a buzzword. I know that sounds, very California, crystal eating or crystal wearing, tofu eating. You know what I mean? But I really think it's true. I think practice has to be mindful. You got to really be paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think if you're doing that, I think it's going to carry over really, really closely. If anything, I think some things are harder in ACE than in the real world. Like, I think steel challenge is harder for some reason. I talked to Noah from ACE about this, and he agrees. And I talked to a couple like the guys that do the steel challenge rooms, and we all kind of agreed the same thing, that it seems like it's actually harder. And we're not sure why. We don't know what the mechanism is,
I'm going to get a chance to test that. My range shut down. We got a local range here, that 90-acre range in the middle of suburbia had to basically shut down. They moved to a 900-acre range not too far from that CMP facility that you mentioned going to, the Talladega site. And they've got 24 action bays that they've built. And a number of those bays are set up with the steel challenge stages all set up and ready to go. All you got to do is walk up and shoot them.
Oh, nice.
I'll be looking forward to taking it, and they're just kind of coming back online after their move. So I'm very much looking forward to taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing another experiment with myself too when it comes to steel challenge, because I have not shot a steel challenge match in live fire in quite some time. So I've been hitting it really heavy in ACE, and I want to go shoot it live after having not shot it at all since before I bought ACE, because I haven't actually shot one in live fire since I bought the system. Right. So I want to see how it carries over that way after not doing it in live fire at all.
I'll probably not do the match, but I will definitely do the my Saturdays are a little screwed up when they run their matches, but I'll definitely be going out the range and running some tests. And it didn't occur to me to go record my my ACE scores and then go match that up, but I'll definitely plan on taking that for a spin. I honestly, I struggle a little bit more on the steel challenge, and I'd say some of the falling steel stages. Man, I don't know what's going on, but there are people out there that are really, really good at that stuff. It seems like it's a different crew that, like the people that do well on the USPSA style classifiers, stand and shoots, and the bigger stage drills is kind of one crew. But you get on that falling steel and steel challenge, and there's a different set of names that rises to the top.
Yeah, especially the ones with the reactive targets. Like I'm pretty good at the prairie fire one, the one that's just got all the different poppers, right? But when it comes to like, what's that one? I'm not resetting this.
Yes.
Like, I can do a really good run in between like 12 bad ones. You know what I mean? Like, it just, the guys that have this pattern down and they just like blaze through it, there's something going on there that I haven't figured out yet. So I got to sort that out. Yeah,
or just the two, I forget the names of them, that have a whole ton of plates, and one's got the star, and you're not.
Oh yeah, Hoser 2 and Hoser 3.
Yeah, like I'm just looking at the raw times people are doing this stuff, and it's like it's like the people with the crazy split times, except they're transitioning as fast as they're splitting, and I'm like, that's an interesting. Somebody's got a lot of trouble to develop that skill set.
Well, and that's something that I'm actually. So there's a local shooter here up in Dallas. Jen Tang, she's a Dragon Girl or whatever in ACE.
Yeah, I've seen her on there. Yep.
Yeah, really good shooter, really good female shooter, phenomenal, nice person too, and she's got great times on those. And she was talking. I mean, you know, I don't see her that often. Like I run into her at matches and stuff every once in a while, so I don't really know her that well. But she's good people. She's solid people. And we were talking about it online, and she was saying that she likes those stages for the vision training.
Right.
Learning to see more precisely and to see it faster. And I was talking to my buddy Les. Les is a USPSA GM, IDPA national champion.
I know of him, and I've interacted with him online over the years. I actually met him, but I very much know who he is.
Yeah, Les is a good dude. He's a solid dude. But he's been geeking out on Steel Challenge in ACE lately. And we were talking about it because we talk all the time. And he was saying that he thinks that because, you know, back in the day, everybody who shot USPSA at a high level also shot Steel Challenge. It was just expected, right? You did both. And he's saying that he thinks they were onto something just for the vision training for the transitions.
Yeah,
You know,
I would agree. But it seems people have taken that and really run with it. And I don't know if I don't know how to express it. It's like they're doing something different in that that's moving them along that I'm not getting through the type of training that I'm doing. So while I find the steel challenge and some of that falling steel to be especially challenging, I can still put out some decent numbers, but not the best numbers like they're doing. I think it's one of these areas that I really want to take some time and focus specifically on that.
yeah,
I love ACE. Like pick a stage, pick a challenge, pick a drill, pick a category of something, and just work the tar out of it for a good period of time. Then put that down and pick a different challenge and grind through that. Learn everything you can. You start getting stale. Pick a different type of challenges and do it. And that's one of the strategies I've been using at ACE. Like I've seen how you go about doing your training, and I don't do it the same way, honestly. I like a little warm up, and then I get on whatever my mission du jour is. But I'll just grind whatever that current set of goals is until I feel like I've milked it far enough, and then I just kind of radically shift to the next thing, and I'll just keep rotating them around like that. So I'm trying to round myself out better, I guess.
no, I think that is one of the strengths of the system because you don't have the same setup, reset, or teardown time, right?
Yeah.
You're not loading mags, you're not pasting targets, you're not moving things around. You can just literally just do rep. And like there are times where I'll do a rep, there are times where on every rep where I'll stop and I'll look at all the splits and all the hits. And then there are times where I'm literally pressing the go button as soon as I'm done. Because I'm feeling something, I've got like this, it's almost like a perceptual thing rather than the hard data thing. Like there's a kind of a feeling I'm trying to get in the reps. You know what I'm saying?
You get in that groove sometimes, and it's magical. But something else I'm doing with this is, earlier on, if the run didn't start off or go off the rails, I just abandon it. Right. And your ACE score kind of goes to hell. And I started saying, this is a really bad habit. I need to every run when I start it, I'm going to finish it. If I flub it up, if I do something, I'm going to stay in the fight. I'm going to run this drill as best as I can every single rep. And I'm not going to, I hero zeroed it and I'm going to bail out of this thing halfway through and hit the reset button to do it. And I just shut that off entirely. We don't do that at all anymore.
In general, I agree with you completely. I think there is a place for, and it's not abandoning the rep. Like I don't stop. But sometimes on steel challenge, like we were talking about steel challenge or like on some of the other steel stages when I'm trying to work on that seeing faster attribute that Jin Tang was talking about, I'll do a shot at every target as fast as I can. And the only way I think it was too fast is if I can't tell myself why I had a miss. You see what I mean? Like I'm still trying to go through the process of figuring out what went wrong. I'm not just blazing away and hoping it connects. But I'm literally turning the volume up. Remember Spinal Tap? I'm turning the volume up to 12.
11.
Yeah. It's 12 for me. 12 for me. I'm more aggressive.
You're a 12 guy.
I'm a 12 guy.
I'm only 11 guy.
But you see what I'm saying though, right? Like it's an intentional exercise and I don't do it all the time. But I've never been good at being a hoser. I'm more of a technical shooter than a hoser, right? To use USPSA terms. And I'm trying to build up more speed while not sacrificing my accuracy or my attentiveness to what's going on. So I've been doing this as an exercise to just work on raw speed at sometimes, at some point, and like I said, the one thing I've got to tell myself is if I can't tell you why I had a miss, then it was too fast. Like that's too far.
Yeah. So I do this all the time. So I'll pick this is the greatest night of our lives because I've done the most reps on it, kind of grinding for my ACE ranking on there. I ran it over and over again. I get going about as good as I consistently do. I'm hitting, I don't know, maybe holding 260 to 280 if you do familiar with the scores on that thing, 2 teleports, whatever it's in. It's 6 targets, 4 open, 2 closed. You got to do these teleports in between, so I don't have enough space to run it inside my house. But the short of it is, I had established I'm running a pretty good tight level of this thing, right? Consistent, hitting it over and over again. Screw ups weren't too bad, and occasionally I'd taste something better. And I'll just stop every so often. It's like I'm going to blaze this as fast as I can, trying to keep them on ground. Right? Just they can't be winging into nowhere. They got to be on ground. But how fast can I do this keeping it on ground? And I'll do that a couple times, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to try to maintain that speed, but I'm going to crank down the accuracy and do it. And you'll run off the rails a couple times. But what I found is that sometimes I could do it. I could take the same next level of speed and drill the thing, maybe not dead clean, but clean enough. And all of a sudden, I've got 300 plus score or 310 or 320. And it's like, I can't sustain that, but clearly I'm capable of more. I just can't tap into that on demand.
The other thing I've been playing around with lately, because this is also something that I struggle with, right? And it's related to the mental and physical aggressiveness and tension issue. It's kind of the same thing. It is easy for me to push too far, too hard, try too much, right? And that honestly is like the biggest thing in matches that causes me to have issues, is that it's funny because it usually doesn't happen after a stage where I make a mistake. It usually happens after a stage where I did really, really well, right? Then the next stage I'm like,
do it again.
I'm like, yeah, I got it now.
Another hit of that. I liked it.
Yeah. So I've been doing that. I've been replicating that in Ace on purpose and making myself dial it back to a match pace. So I'll intentionally do a rep where I know it's going to, and this is a different exercise than the one I just talked about, right? These are two different training modalities.
Yes.
And you don't do either one all the time. But like I'll do some match mode reps on a stage in the game, and then I'll intentionally just go off the rails. And then the next one has to be like, no more than one Charlie at a good pace.
Interesting. So you're dialing up. There's been.
So I'm learning to pull back the reins.
About that, can you control and run it at 50%, 70%, 90%, 100%? Can you set your throttle and run it, not just do that, but on demand and almost measurable to those levels? I think that's interesting. But what I'm doing is kind of like what you're talking about. I'll have a bunch of favorites laid out where it's stuff that I should be able to get a diamond or better run on demand.
Right.
And I like to put it into random mode, and I'll just give myself one run at these things, and I should be able to do dozens of these things on there. One run, diamond run, next one. Right? It's random. You don't know what's coming up. Although their random algorithm seems like it needs some help. They don't seem to get a lot of repetitions, and some you don't get for a long time. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, that ability is a lot more match-like because you get your one run. So yeah, you're familiar with the stage. You've run them all, countless times. But can you deliver time after time after time? And where I run off the rails is inevitably sooner or later, I don't do what I think I'm going to do. And I get mad and I want to do it more than once.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I have to put myself, okay, stick to your discipline and, one run this stage, one run the next stage, one run the next stage, and deliver on demand.
And like I'll do something similar. And I got the 3 to 5 repetitions from Les, who got it from a guy on the East Coast who got it from Eric Graffel, right? So it's been passed down, right? But I'll do 3 to 5 reps. I'll do it just like you talked about. It's a random stage. I won't even let it be my favorites. Like it's just totally random. It's whatever the game throws at me. And if I do it well, it's 3 reps. If I have a problem that is easily identifiable, that is not just me pushing too hard or being an idiot, I'll do 4 or 5 to fix the one problem, right? But then 5 is the max. That's it. And I got to move on. And Les's reasoning behind the 3 to 5 reps was that it stops you from shooting too conservatively. So you tend to be too conservative on one rep, knowing that you don't want to mess it up.
Right.
So you're still kind of learning to modulate your pushing and your pace, but you're also learning to consciously control it too, like we talked about. Because that's something, if I could crack the code on the attributes of the top shooters, one of the ones that I would value the most is their ability to turn their pace up and down precisely whenever they feel like it, on demand, no matter how much they're stressed. Those guys, the really top guys, it seems like they can do that, You know,
you're not winning this. You're not winning that match on any one stage. You're winning it
no.
on, right? I mean, you go to your local match, you put down 6 consistent stages, or how many stages are offering at your match, and you don't hero any of them, and you don't zero any of them. You don't, let's say you had I collected 90% of the points in a USPSA match, kind of across the board. I had no penalties.
You're doing pretty good. Yeah.
That was an outstanding, an outstanding result. But let's say I collected 80% of the points, or take your pick, right? I ran them all clean. I know I'm going to place really well in that match.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because people are just, they're all over the place in terms of their performance.
And that's always been one of the things that, because of the character trait I talked about earlier, where I tend to push and be too aggressive, that has been one of my failure points. So that's what I've really been working on a lot the last year. But I saw a quote about this, and I don't remember who said it. It was one of the newer crop of top shooters. It might have been Joey Sauerland or one of those guys. Matches don't measure your ceiling. They measure your floor.
Interesting.
And I really like that way of looking at it, right? That paradigm shift.
Whoever can average the highest floor wins.
Exactly.
Whoever averages the highest score wins. That's probably a lot more true than, if you looked at the best ones, they're winning it on not screwing up the most.
Well, and if you think about it, there's value in that attribute for the real world too, because one of the things I strongly believe is that every fight in the history of the world, whether it's one-on-one or between armies, has been won by the side that made the fewest mistakes. In general. I mean, obviously it's a generalization. Sometimes people are just really outmatched, and that's a different thing, But assuming a roughly equivalent match, it's who makes the least mistakes. So I think learning, because the mistake costs you so much more than you can gain by burning it down at your best, right?
Yes.
And think about that for a gunfight. A mistake in a gunfight, the average gunfight is 3 to 5 rounds at 3 to 5 yards. A mistake is, you're very easily possibly done if you make a mistake. It's far better to be consistent at maybe a little bit less of that blazing pace, right? I'm not saying don't be fast. That's not my point. Before I get comments in the, down below in the YouTube section telling me how bad this is. No, I'm not saying you don't need to be fast and accurate. You absolutely do. But it doesn't matter how much I can blaze it down, burn it down 5 times out of 10 if it's one of the other 5 when it counts.
Yeah, I fumbled my draw because I was going too hard out of the gate and got tangled up in my shirt, and that's a pretty serious mistake to recover from.
Yeah. Yes.
And the other guy is operating at what they call it, natural speed, right? He doesn't really care. There's a busload full of nuns behind me. He's going to operate as fast as he humanly can, and you don't have time to make a mistake. He might be a little faster than you, but you can't afford to make that mistake. You got to run on target, and then you got to keep sinking them.
The mistake costs you as much or more than not being as fast.
Taking that extra couple of tenths to do it clean, whatever you need to do for the situation, I think is a big deal. And actually, you talk about the natural speed thing. Always kind of struck with me as an argument, because it mirrored something I learned in paintball. So we used to have the thing where, I don't know what the rules are these days, but we come up behind somebody really close, and they suggested that we give somebody a chance to surrender before popping him with a 300 foot per second paintball in the back and leaving a nice welt, which would make him whine and carry on, which was great fun. But anyways, we learned something really interesting, and that is, you got a never-ending stream of new people showing up with these little short pistols back in the day. And with annoying regularity, when you told that guy to surrender, he would whip around and put a ball right between your eyes faster than you thought was humanly possible. This is an untrained, adrenalized human being.
Yeah.
And we saw that pattern over and over and over again. And then we just shot him and take the penalty. Because you get shot in the head by new guys that I don't know what adrenaline drug. I know what they're taking. They're taking adrenaline, and it made them do things that you wouldn't think are possible. So I guess my one speed concern in the street is, you get some adrenalized bad guy operating at a purely uninhibited speed that gets lucky, you might be in trouble. But is racing, the counter argument is, if I race my draw, I fumble that draw, I don't put that first shot where it needs to go, I've made the mistake. Now I'm really behind the curve.
Well, and not just that, right? But because you're trained, like they're going to be pulling the trigger as fast as they can.
Yes.
Which for them is going to be about between 0.25 and 0.3 tenths of a second.
Okay.
So I would argue that you don't really want to split faster than about 0.25 to 0.20, no matter how good you are at splits, except in outlier circumstances, right? Except in rare circumstances. But the difference is for you, because you're well trained, that between 0.2 and 0.25 feels very relaxed and comfortable and controlled.
Yes.
And that's the difference, right? And then when you add into that using angles and capturing the opponent's timing and the psychological pressure and everything else, you have a much better chance of coming out on top, I think. But they're redlined. So yes, they could get, they could get lucky
here or there, but most of them are going somewhere.
Right. They could get lucky. I'm not saying they won't, but it'll be luck. You know, it's just spasmodic muscular tension and, you know, complete mindless shutdown of all the higher nervous system functions, right?
But, you know, you watch, you know, gangbangers are killing each other in every city every day.
Yep.
Untrained with nothing more than pointing that gun in there and yanking that trigger as fast as they can, and people are dying. So,
oh yeah, no, I'm not taking away from the danger, believe me.
Although I think if you look at the stats, I'll use the Tom Gibbons stuff. He's using that trauma center up in the Memphis area, which is not that many of them are dying.
No, most of them have been shot. Most of them have been shot.
And not so many die unless they get the wrong shot or they die in the scene. If they get to care, they're fine. So that also tells you that lucky shot statistically is probably not going to be a mortal shot.
Well, it goes back to how small the optimal target areas actually are. Optimal, not acceptable, optimal, right? And an acceptable hit with medical care, with modern medical care, you're going to survive from that. And you're going to be able to keep fighting from that if you're well trained, usually, you know.
Take your bump and stay in the fight. Right?
Yeah, and I'm not recommending it. I'm not saying, you know, intentionally take a shot. That's not my point. But I think that there's a lot of truth to that, right? There was somewhere we were going with this. Oh, back to the paintball thing, right? So I would argue that because you're allowing them that opportunity, I mean, you're not
in time to get ahead.
Exactly, right?
You're assuming they're going to surrender, and I can't react fast enough. So we were setting ourselves up into a bad situation by rules to take care of the new guys, but the tactical effect of that was disastrous.
Yeah, because it's just you're kind of already mentally, you're in a different mode now. You know what I mean?
And it's not like hit him with your paintball. Okay, great. I shot him. He shot me. He still shot me, right? And it's like, he's not going to stop just because I shot him with a paintball. Once he's going, he's going.
If anything, he might shoot you more because you shot him with a paintball.
Yeah, but you know, there's some interesting things to learn about human behavior when you put people in artificially stressful situations, because the juices still flow. They still behave like people under stress, and there's good stuff to be learned there for sure.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think there's a lot of value in that. And I know what I was going to talk about. Back to the Eric Graffel part, right? So I was talking with a guy the other day, one of the ShivWorks founding guys, good friend of mine, Paul Sharp. And you know Paul? Have you met him?
I've not met him, but I've been seeing him online, interacting with him for a long time.
Yeah, Paul's a good dude. But we were talking about, and this, I think all this stuff ties together. I've been kind of geeking out on this lately. Because there's this concept of interleaving training, right? Of kind of, rather than doing block training, and block training is important too. There's times for block training, absolutely, right? Yep. But there's also a time for this kind of interleaving training where you're mixing all the different things together and not doing any one of them too many times in a row.
Yep.
So the difference between the two would be like when we're grinding away on one of the stages in ACE, like you talked about, or when you're doing the one where you're randomizing it and doing each one once. That's the two kind of styles. And he said something really interesting from not a technical point of view, but from more of a tactical or strategic point of view, right? He said that some of the best fighters he's interviewed when they're getting ready for the octagon, they work with as many sparring partners as possible. And they don't necessarily pick them for how close they are to the opponent they're going to be fighting style. It's like a random array of, 200 different people they're sparring with. And he's got this theory about getting looks on a skill. And when Paul was talking about it, he's talking about how, you see, like, say you're seeing, a shoot, real simple technique, right? Shoot to a guard, right? Say you're seeing that. But you're seeing it done 200 different ways, and they're all slightly different. And what that's giving you is the ability to kind of adjust your technique on the fly and read the opponent really well, right? And I think that has a lot of value and a lot of power, I think, for both technical training and tactical training. Because on the technical side, like, think about your draw. No matter how good you are, I don't care, I don't care if you're Max Michel, your draw is not the exact same every time. Your grip's going to be slightly different. Your draw stroke's going to be slightly different every single time. Just a little fraction, right? Those little fractions can impact your performance. So getting all these different looks on your draw, doing draws in different conditions in your practice sessions and on stages down through the years gives you all these looks. And now your subconscious has learned to modify your technique on the fly and optimize it for the grip you've got right now. Right? And then on the tactical side of things, there's only so many pure principles in tactics, right? Like we'll talk about what I think is like probably the most foundational one, fixing and flanking. Okay. People have fixed and flanked since we were hunting woolly mammoths with sharp sticks, right? We've been doing that long. Mm-hmm. But how many different ways can a fix and a flank be done? Millions, limitless, right? CQB is full of fixing and flanking, even though you don't realize it because you're moving while you do it, Traffic stops, like high-risk traffic stops, are fixing and flanking when you have two police cars, right? You talked earlier about defensive tactics in Sambo and taking, an uncooperative subject down with two police officers. One is fixing, the other one's flanking. Like it's all the same on the principle-based level. But the more looks you get at that principle, I think the easier it becomes for you to kind of internalize it and apply it across the board in every situation. And I think that all too often, and I know I've been guilty of this, in training, we try to purify things, make them cleaner than they're really going to be in the real world, instead of learning to accept the fact that there's going to be noise contamination, right? That things are going to be different every single time, and learning to roll with that rather than try to make them perfect. Like going back to grappling, how many times have you seen a guy, he really wants this one submission. He wants this one submission so bad that he can taste it. And he's not getting it because he's trying to make it perfect, instead of just kind of going with the flow. I know you know what I'm talking about.
He's trying to force the submission he wants, not taking the submission that's available to him.
Exactly.
Because he can't see it, right? He can't.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Oh yeah, no. I was talking about myself.
No, but yeah. You see it in other people, you see it yourself. It's like, stop that,
So I think that in general, this is one of the mechanisms of training, I think, that separates like top performers from the vast majority of people in a given subject or craft or art, is that ability to fix things on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I think the way you get that is by that interleaving training where you're seeing all these different looks on something, these different ways of doing the same thing. so that you learn to adapt it to whatever way it needs to be.
So
I don't know. I've been geeking out a lot of this lately.
Specifically looking at that, like I was working it was before my last range master class, and working on the draws and trying to get, back in my concealed carry draw groove, set some aggressive goals for me. And one of the things I realized is that I wear a whole lot of different kinds of shirts. Sometimes I'm wearing your, standard, gun guy, martial arts guy, whatever, logoed cotton t-shirts. And sometimes I'm wearing these stretchy four-way shirts. And sometimes it's a little cool and I may have a long sleeve shirt on top of a shirt or whatever. So I was finding, especially with the really stretchy, really nice, quick dry shirts, man, these things get tangled up around your hands and thumbs and back of your gun and optic. And like, if you don't have a really good, consistent clear across all these different clothing types, there's a lot of ways you can screw up that draw.
Oh, yeah.
So instead of wearing my preferred range attire or whatever, standard, cotton t-shirt of a certain, looseness or tightness, right? We all have a favorite shirt that we're going to wear for when we want to perform. I started wearing just all the random stuff that I normally wear, trying to do it. And you know what? A lot of those shirts were gumming me up. It's like, I need to readapt my draw stroke so that regardless of what clothing I'm doing, or maybe I'm doing a draw and move or move and draw or something like that, am I overcoming these little mini obstacles that are getting in the way and still making that draw work as fast as I can for that circumstance? So it's kind of a little micro example of randomization, but it's also, if I have to use my skills in the street, chances are I'm wearing what I'm wearing, not my favorite, go to the range, go to a competition shirt.
Yeah, no,
I was screwing up, and I was like, okay, well, I'm only going to practice in my favorite shirts. Well, no, you're wearing all this other stuff too. You need to be able to make it work no matter what you're wearing.
Yeah, you got to practice what you're bad at.
Exactly.
I went through the same thing with reloads from concealment. I found that certain clothing I had was really fouling up my reloads. So I changed my clear, and I was doing like a pluck before, like you do from the high hands, right? I was doing that for my reloads. And now I do it with like that C grip, like you use for the regular arms at sides appendix draw. I do that for my reloads all the time because it's consistent no matter what I'm wearing.
Interesting. I actually had to change out doing the C grip for my primary draw and missing it on these shirts, and had to do more of a grab and sometimes do more of an exaggerated motion to get 100% clear on all the different materials. So it might cost me an extra tenth or two, but it worked on all the different types of shirts that I was wearing, where my other technique was somewhat reliably failing, especially with these like 4-day stretchy, quick dry type shirts.
Yeah, I didn't change from the C clamp for the draw, but what I did was I changed the line of the clear. So I used to kind of go straight up for speed, and I was getting the same thing. It was fouling on the optic a certain percentage of the time.
Yep.
Especially with certain shirts, right? So I started going on a diagonal kind of up to my strong side with my support hand, and I found that cleared the garment reliably off the optic, no matter what I was wearing. So it's probably, like you said, it's probably, 0.05 or a tenth slower, but I'm not going to foul the garment up and be 1/4 of a second slower.
I guess the other one I was doing is I got a bad habit when I draw, that thumb comes up there and I hang my thumb. And when you punch that thing out and there's a shirt hanging on the back of it and it rips your thumb backwards, very unpleasant. And it's like that would be a major flaw in a practical usage scenario. I just torqued the hell out of my thumb, and now not only do I have to fix my grip, my thumb hurts and I'm a little distracted because I just screwed up.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never done
never hung your thumb on a shirt like that.
No, never done that.
Tried to rip it out of your pocket?
No, never done that. All right, we're at about an hour and a half, so I could probably keep talking to you for hours, my friend, but we should probably wrap it up.
We will do that over some cocktails up at the lake house and get some shooting and grappling and hanging out.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in without a doubt.
You don't take me when you're in town. Like I said, I'll be offended if you don't give me a shot.
No, I should be there a couple times this year for sure. So we'll definitely make that happen. Before we go, where can people find your firearms training business, your combatives and martial arts stuff, everything you're doing?
So I have a great online presence. My personal thing is Chris Magyar on Facebook. The business is the Firearms Concierge. It's a a modest page on Facebook, just kind of getting started with my whole footprint here. I'm real early in starting this sort of retirement business. So I don't have a website, don't have a whatever. I'm mostly operating on word of mouth, not trying to, not trying to do host classes of a dozen randos. I'm looking for people. They don't have to be experienced people, just people who care, right? Really want to study this, put a little breadth and depth and performance on there. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on. So it's all local, close stuff. Anyways, if you're interested in doing that or want to catch up with me online in ACE, I'd love people to reach out. And, personally, I love to train. I'm not doing this stuff for the money anymore. I'm retired. I'm fine. I'm just doing it because it's training and teaching other people is what is the most fulfilling to me.
No, I get you there. Absolutely. And don't forget the Facebook group, the ACE for the Advanced Practitioner you're running, because I've been having a lot of fun in there.
I'd thank Chris Bean for that one. I took it over for him. But there's an ACE VR group. There's a VR group for the Advanced Practitioner. If you don't, it's a private group. You can always hit me up for an invite or somebody's on there. And all it really is, I saw some interesting commentary. I think it was at the Combative Summit or the Deliberate Training Group. That the general group of these are not your peers. There's a lot of random people on there who are not taking this very seriously. And I think the whole point of the ACE VR group for the Advanced Practitioner, it's not meant to be a heavy filter. It's just meant to be people who are like, this is a serious training tool for them. And I'm hoping to attract people who, I don't care if they contribute or not, they can learn, they might have something to contribute. They look at this as a real training modality. And that's all I'm trying to do. That and be nice. There's a lot of these internet forums that are just, I don't know, they're just crass and cranky and whatnot. And I can't say I haven't been that guy in the past, but I'm trying to make this place a positive environment.
I generally think, not always, but as a general rule that goes back to something we talked about earlier about a lot of people have never been punched in the face.
Wait, how does that phrase go? Civilized men, by and large, much less polite than savages, because it's not so likely that they're going to get their head split with an axe.
Robert E. Howard.
Yes, I'm sure I'm completely mangled that, but that was the general idea.
Yeah, no. Robert E. Howard and Conan,
yes,
I believe is where the quote comes from.
That's it.
All right, so we got to do part 2 of this because, like I said, I could have gone for another hour and a half easy.
Well, it's a pleasure to finally get to talk to you in person, and thank you for inviting me on your podcast. And I hope we shared as a value to somebody.
Nope, I'm hoping so too, and we'll definitely do it again. I'm gonna take you up on a little bit of whiskey and shooting and grappling, not all together. Separate those in the proper chronology. Well, but when I'm down in Alabama,
I'll put one quick thing out there. So I've got a beautiful lake property in Alabama that I've built a small private range a couple of miles away. And the remodel is currently underway. I'm going to end up with a nice size matted studio space in a guest house basement. And one of the things I want to do is attract basically cool people that have something to share to come up there, hang out, train, relax, enjoy themselves. And to me, it's something that I enjoy being up there. But I think the combination of having a small kind of private training location in a absolutely gorgeous environment. And I'd love to have you, and I'm sure there's any number of people that would be listening to this podcast that would be just awesome to have up there. So hopefully by middle of this year, whatever, I'll be operational up there. And I hope we can all have some really cool training opportunities.
No, that sounds like a good time. Absolutely. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Chris, and I will see everybody the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Stop the recording.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.